So I feel like you could have taken several of Greg's slides and replaced CBM with additive manufacturing, and we probably would have some of the same points. I think the thing that Greg mentioned is the sustainment at scale requires standards, and I would say the same thing is true with any new technology or new approach. Same thing with additive manufacturing. Looking to take this technology from prototyping and from lab use into production environments across the department and in the supply chain is going to require standards and increased standardization. So hopefully I'll touch on a few of the things we've done and certainly more room to grow. Again, I'm going to skip through a couple of these slides. They'll be made available just for background, but the why additive manufacturing, pretty much exactly the same reasons that Greg talked about. This is a tool in the sustainment toolkit to support readiness as well as innovation. We're working on a department-wide strategy for additive manufacturing that really captures the benefits and why this is critical to DoD's mission. So just some quick points here. And then just to kind of talk big picture, when we talk about standardization, there are technical standards, but there's also a standardizing culture is not quite the right word, but there's an alignment of sort of culture and direction that we've been trying to do from the ground up and the top down within the additive community. And so I just want to spend a moment on this slide to talk through some of the bigger picture aspects that are happening that are going to help with that overall concept of really alignment and standardization and this strategic approach and working through, as I just mentioned, a strategic document for additive manufacturing, really codifying and capturing what the value, the benefits are, and how do we get there? What are those strategic goals that we really need to focus on to help this technology become really just a tool in the toolbox, recognizing its limitations as well as its advantages. What's real, where do we still need to put effort in, where have we come a long way, and what work needs to happen, and providing that common framework from across the military services. So really taking all these pockets of excellence and expertise that have been building over, I would say the last decade, but maybe decades before that, depending on the technology, really coalescing them into this DoD-wide strategic document that was written in across. Really, it was truly an inter-service, interagency effort pulling that document together. So looking for that to be released the end of this calendar year, or hopefully the end of this quarter. It's just in the final stages of kind of review and approval. That's sort of the big picture. Where do we want to go, the vision, and how do we get there? The department policy sort of sets the left and right bounds of how do we kind of do it, right? It's more on that implementation and execution side. This builds off of the sustainment interim policy that Greg put out 2 years ago and has been extended through the end of this calendar year. This document takes it and applies the use of additive manufacturing beyond sustainment. So really covering the whole life cycle of what we're doing with additive manufacturing and providing that common set of bounds. And then tied to that, we're looking to put out a guidebook to help translate that policy from those very high policy statements into more concrete guidance. This is where standards would really play a big part. To help provide the common set of practices and best practices to implement AM. And then taking that from the very high level to the implementation or campaign plans. The services and agencies have some level of implementation or campaign plan already. It's a question now of either developing them if they don't exist or expanding them to cover the pieces that are in the policy. But this is really where the rubber hits the road in terms of implementation. What we do in the joint community is looking at kind of that strategy, looking at the campaign plans, looking where we have those common problems or issues that could benefit from a joint approach. And that's what we look at in the JAMWG. And I'll talk through some of those as examples of what we're doing in particular to align and standardize the approach of additive in the department. And last and certainly not least is the budgeting process. And being able to incorporate the requirements and needs within each individual organization, as well as those joint challenges that have been identified and solution sets into that process. I'm going to skip through a couple of these things just in the interest of time, but you'll have them, and I'm always available for questions. And our leadership team, Tracy Frost. Tracy is the chair of the Joint Additive Manufacturing Working Group, works very closely with Greg and the AMO team and the Joint Defense Manufacturing Council. The executive secretary, Mr. Rob Gold, is Tracy's boss. So our whole team's available if there's any questions after the fact, that we would certainly be open to conversations and how to continue this dialogue. JAMWG, again, providing that across the entire enterprise approach for additive manufacturing. And again, you can see some of the structure, the objectives, some of the initial projects and outcomes, and what the opportunities are. This is where I'm going to spend just 1 or 2 more minutes touching on a few of the highlights. And I'm glad that Mr. Batia was able to talk about the AMSC, the Additive Manufacturing Standards Collaborative. I don't have it specifically on here because it's a task that's already been completed. One of the enhancements to that system and tool, and it's available online on the ANSI website, is a live gap status tracker. You can go in and they've identified 93 gaps in standards in additive manufacturing. You can go on the website, you can click on the different categories of information and see the status, where they are, how important they are. They've been prioritized based on the road mapping work that was done. And that's all work that was done in partnership by America Makes, which is funded through OSD Research Engineering in Tracy's office. So big support of that work and really helpful. The JAMWG priorities are really focused around, I would say, 4 big buckets: qualification, certification, continuing to make sure we understand that every part is exactly what we think it is, that it has the right properties, that it's going to perform as necessary and do the job. Second is around that data piece. Additive manufacturing is a data-driven manufacturing process. You need a 3D model. You need to have the tech specs in there, not just the model, but how to operate the machine. So data-rich manufacturing process. So we need to have those common standards of how we're going to do that and make sure we're doing it securely. The third is around workforce development and making sure that we have qualified technicians operating the machines, that designers understand how to use the tools, as well as how our logistics and acquisition communities know how to incorporate AM as a tool and consider that when things like buying spare parts or buying new systems, and how to acquire the right data set. So a lot of what Greg talked about with CBMM Plus in terms of data ownership absolutely plays in for additive. And then the last I would say is more on the business side of things. So things like establishing a policy, the strategy, having best practices available, and being more consistent. So related to standards, I think some of the progress we've made, the one I really want to highlight is last year, 2018, in the Additive Manufacturing Workshop, that is a partnership between JAMWG, the AMO group, as well as America Makes. One of the focus areas was around standardization and standards of additive manufacturing. And the group actually took that AMSC roadmap and really dove into the items that were most specifically related to DoD and started to kind of highlight them and prioritize them. And we talked with the DSPO, and actually Jesse Chambers is a part of the JAMWG, and Jesse's been assigned to help the additive community bridge the gap into those standards organizations. So through Jesse's work over the last year and a half, we've been able to, as new standards are coming up in these SDOs, be able to make sure we're getting the right technical input from the services directly into that development process. So I think that one of our goals was increasing engagement with SDOs, and I would say we've definitely made great progress on that thanks to Jesse and his work. Certainly Jesse's one person, and there's much more that needs to be done on those 93 gaps, but we certainly have a start. So a lot of the same things that I think Greg touched on in terms of having standards, standard technical data packages, having standards for how we qualify and certify materials and machines. We're working on the DLA is leading a project to look at the different tech data packages based on the MIL standard, but then evolving that for what we need for 3D data and additive manufacturing. So that's another piece kind of under the JAMWG umbrella, as well as what we're doing under materials data and understanding, in particular for metal additive manufacturing, which is typically used in higher end applications and more critical parts, making sure that we've got the right material and process data, as well as the standard process. And that's a joint project we're doing between DoD, FAA, in partnership with the Department of Energy, as well as industry, and in partnership with American Makes. So this is not everything. Just wanted to touch on a few of the specifics that we are making progress on, and recognizing we're kind of coming to the end of time here. Just a little bit more about R&E at the end of the slides and how we work and the leadership team there. So with that, I will wrap up and give us a little bit of time for questions, hopefully.
Thank you both. Chris, we have time for one question.
Okay. The question is, have you considered XML as being developed for item and life cycle data with obsolescence management / DMS/MS with IEC?
So is that, so Kelly, did you want to field that one or did you want me to do that?
I think it was directed at you. I'm not sure if the additive specifically is looking at XML.
Yeah, okay. So the answer to the question is yes. You know, in the study that we've done, XML was one of the standards that was highlighted as something that we should take a greater interest in and drive. And it is kind of a de facto standard for us in many cases anyway, with the types of data that we're interested in for CBM+. So that we will be looking at that one closely. Chris, was there a second part of that question?
No, but I have another, it looks like a good and quick question. You want me to field it?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Is there a standardized definition of additive manufacturing versus fabrication?
We typically rely on the ASTM F42 definitions of additive manufacturing, acknowledging there are many different terms that are used out there, but that's traditionally the one that we've been working with. I think DAU also has that incorporated as part of their standard definitions.
Thank you.